Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay, just Jay, your resident troublemaker and your resident culture warrior. I hope you are all doing awesome. We are just a little bit closer to the weekend. One more day, people. We'll get through one more day, and then we got the weekend. All right, so let's get right into it because this article it's the type of article that really, okay, how long are we into this? Okay, we're only 42 seconds into this video. Okay, this article really grinds my gears, burns my britches, irritates and aggravates me. Okay, we hit the 1 minute mark. Shit like this really pisses me the fuck off. Okay, all right, there we go. So let's get right into it. And this is coming to us from the folks over at Startifacts, and it says, tampering with Tolkien's lore in Rings of Power is actually justified. That's right. There it is, folks. You have an article where they actually tell you that tampering with Tolkien's lore is justified. So let's see how. The Lord of the Rings of Power, got a lot of criticism during and after its first season. Some of the accusations levied at it. I'm going to have to translate. Like its excessive number of storylines, flat characters, and frequently poor dialogue, are difficult to refute. But one of the most common criticisms is the Rings of Power being an unfaithful adaptation, which disregards the lore of Tolkien's Middle-earth in many places, most notably bringing together events which were separated by thousands of years. However, it can be argued that such criticism is misplaced. Really. There is a long history of successful adaptations that significantly diverge from the source material in cinema and television. Furthermore, Amazon was hampered by only having the rights to the Lord of the Rings books and the information from their appendices, so they could only adapt elements the Second Age described in the appendices of The Return of the King. Okay, stop right there. First of all, whether or not other franchises have had successful adaptations is frickin' irrelevant. That's like saying, well, other people have been robbed, so why are you being so upset that I'm mugging you? Makes no sense, okay? That's like a red herring straw man sort of argument. There's a long history of other successful adaptations that diverge from the source material. It's not the point. Completely misses the point. And furthermore, by saying Amazon was hampered by only having the rights to the Lord of the Rings books and the information from their appendices, whose fault is that? Amazon spent $1 billion, okay? They don't get to use an excuse that, oh, well, we didn't get the Silmarillion. Well, maybe instead of getting the Lord of the Rings and focusing on that because you thought you could milk it for some money, you greedy bastards, maybe instead of doing that, if you really wanted to tell some Tolkien stories, you get the rights to the Silmarillion for your $1 billion, right? And then you can create these whole new stories and you'd have access to the material to do it. So using that as an excuse doesn't fly with me. Okay, because I'm like, listen, you were in negotiations. You could have negotiated for the Silmarillion. You chose not to. Why? Because there's no money in it from your corporate executive point of view. Okay, your bottom line, you don't see how you can milk it for any money. However, you wanted the Lord of the Rings and the appendices because, one, the Lord of the Rings means you can slap the Lord of the Rings on it, which to you is what the franchise is all about, and it's going to bring in Tolkien fans, right? So you can milk them for their money. Number two, by doing that, you have access to things like hobbits and Balrogs, right? And Gandalf and wizards and stuff, and all these member berries that you can build into your show to suck people in to watch your garbage dumpster fire of a show. Okay, so I'm sorry if I seem a little bit upset about that, because to me that's like the most insulting, nonsensical, asinine excuse I've heard for this show so far. Well, we didn't have the rights to the Silmarillion. Well, whose problem? Who did that? That's an Amazon problem. Okay, you were negotiating, you didn't get the Silmarillion. So what? That's not an excuse to take material from the Silmarillion and completely disregard and throw out a man's life's work because you couldn't afford to get the rights to all the books, right? But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to it. The expanded material from the Silmarillion and more recent compilations of world-building notes by Tolkien, such as The Fall of Numenor, remained off-limits to them. There were some vague areas which allowed the showrunners to smuggle in things like the Trees of Valinor, but they could not take too many risks. Okay, so you admit that, you're referencing things that you don't have the rights to reference, okay? But at the same time, you're saying, well, it's unfair to criticize us because we didn't have the books to reference. Okay. And not only information on the Second Age in appendices was fairly scant, just a brief historical material laying out key developments. These developments were, as mentioned above, separated by thousands of years. There were two momentous events which shaped the Second Age: the forging of the titular Rings of Power and the destruction of the Númenórean civilization, with the subsequent War of the Last Alliance against Sauron. Excuse me. And despite longevity of dwarves and men of Númenor, none of them could conceivably witness both. There were possible ways to work around that, such as making a big time skip across which only immortal characters, Sauron, Galadriel, etc., would persist. However, that would have required making two entirely different mortal casts, not just different actors playing the same characters who retained their development from before the time skip, as House of the Dragon did. Plotting such a story would have been exceedingly difficult, so the reason for compressing the timeline is obvious. Yes, because you don't have the skill to do it. You just said it. Plotting such a story would have been exceedingly difficult. Yes. The reason why you didn't do it is because you don't have the skills to do it. Of course, it still remains to be seen whether sacrifices for the sake of making the plot more comprehensible and digestible for an average viewer are going to pay off and result in a plot that's actually good. No, Aaron Jimenez, no, 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 and no. Okay? Again, this is an argument that really gets under my skin a lot because, if you know how the industry works, you know that they very much could have negotiated for the Silmarillion. I guarantee you they could have got the rights to the Silmarillion if they had gone for that alone with the amount of money they brought to the table. Okay? The fact was they were operating from a sense of, well, if we can get the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits and their appendices, right, that allows us to milk the whole Lord of the Rings and that fandom, right? And it allows us, the appendices give us enough wiggle room that we can set a story in something that's not familiar, right? And that's why we have, essentially hobbits, the Harfoots in the show. That's why you have, the Meteor Man, i.e. Gandalf, i.e. Wizard, Istari, in the show. That's why, we have the, romantic tension between, Sauron and Galadriel and stuff like that, because they needed to approach it from that angle. They needed to try and throw in all the member berries, right? That's why in that one scene you see Ents when the meteor's going overhead. You see Ents, but that's it. That's the only time we see Ents again, right? Because they just want to throw member berries and see what sticks, right? That's why the Nazgûls looked like the Nazgûl, okay, in the show. Right? Again, it's a throwback. Every time you hear them say, oh, well, it was a throwback to this, it was a throwback to that. What they're essentially saying is they're playing on your nostalgia, right? It's a member berry, okay? But I cannot stand and I will not tolerate this stupid ass, dumb as all get out argument of, well, we didn't have access to the Silmarillion, so we had to sort of make some stuff up on our own. Bullshit. You could have had access. You just chose not to spend the money there. Okay? It wasn't as lucrative, in your opinion. That said, you still could have told a coherent show. Again, and I've said this in one of my other previous videos. They did not need to tell every story. Right? They're trying to tell the fall of Númenor. They're trying to tell, the rise of Sauron. They're trying to tell the War of the Last Alliance, right? The creation of the rings and Sauron's war with the elves, right? They're trying to tell all of these stories which happen over thousands of years. Why not just focus on one? Why not just have a incredibly good show that was just focused on the last 5 years of Númenor, right? You could still work in the Anatar angle, right? If you had bothered to get the Silmarillion, you still work in the Anatar slash Sauron angle. You have this big world-changing catastrophic event where you sort of, as the climax for the series and stuff like that. You could have had all of those characters then would have been able to be, returning characters. You wouldn't have had to off and replace people every season, right? And it still would have been a good story, right? Or maybe tell the story of just like the War of the Last Alliance, right? Or maybe tell the story of the fall of Eregion, right? In other words, you had all these big moments, and you could have picked any one of them to do a 5-season show about that could have been in-depth and stuck to the lore and done it justice. And you chose not to because you wanted to hit as much as you could because you want to just bang it out, one and done. Get your 5 seasons, get in and get out, okay, and try to hit as many marks as you can to say, see, well, we told that story first. Yeah, but you're telling it shitty. You're telling a crappy story. You're making a crappy series. Nobody likes it. No Tolkien fan worth their salt gives a crap about your show, okay? The people who like your show, and I hate to say this, and I know it's an overgeneralization because there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, the people who like Rings of Power do not know or do not care about Tolkien's work. Okay, that's the reality. Because anybody who is okay with this much departure from the lore in a show that is supposed to be adapting the original stories, okay, that's what they keep telling us. It's an adaptation. Right? You're adapting the original stories, but you're throwing lore out the window. Okay, anybody who's okay with that, you can't say that you're a fan of the man's work because you're willing to throw it away so that some big corporation can make a buck. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I've ranted long enough. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If you like the video, like the video. If you feel like sharing the video, by all means do so. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. It gets us seen, and it lets us grow the ranks of the army of beautiful badasses that are here holding the line and defending the professor and his legacy. And if you have not already, I would hope you would consider subscribing and joining us as we continue to defend the work that this man spent his life creating, and that this show is just trying to cash in on, and whatever damage it does to that legacy of work of his, be damned. And we're going to fight back, okay? We're fans. We don't have to accept it. So I would hope that you would consider joining us with a subscription. This way you will know when the next video comes out, and you can watch me rant and rave again. And if you're a returning subscriber, as always, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. You guys make this all awesome, and you make it worthwhile. Remember to go over to the community tab. There is a link to the Discord. We now have the Cutter One Discord. And go over there. We talk about different things. There's a channel for talking about Dragonlance. There's a channel for talking about D&D. There's a channel for talking about Elder Scrolls. There's obviously a channel for talking about Tolkien. There's a channel that's about writing and world building. And if you guys have suggestions for more channels, I can add them and stuff like that. So go on over, check that out. Join the Discord. Get in on the conversation. Everybody here's a good bunch. I like looking through the comment section because I in the beginning there were 1 or 2 people that were dropping, some rather questionable commentary that I had to sort of clean up. But for the most part, you guys are awesome about it because you keep it respectful, but you keep it well informed. And you make your argument. You don't just throw out an argument. You back it up. And I love that. I love seeing people be like, this is wrong, and here's why, right? Even when you guys are telling me that I messed up on something, you guys are always like, hey, Cutter, you messed up here. Here's why. And I'm like, oh, you know what? You're right. So anyway, love it, love it, love it. So go check out the Discord if you haven't already, and join in the conversation. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Remember, as always, be good, be safe, be awesome, but more importantly, stay more dorkish. I will talk to you on the next one. Peace.